What's up, guys? Welcome back to Between the Pylons. I'm John Camacho. Thank you so much for watching. And guys, today we are talking about the Ravens 2021 draft review. Let's get right into it, all right? Just so you guys know, I am going to be doing a breakdown of the first three rounds for every player that win the first three rounds for the Ravens. I'm going to talk a little bit of draft value. Going to talk a little bit of like draft economics. Going to break it down in a little bit different way as far as like my final grade at the end. Let's get right into it. Let's just take an overview look at their entire draft, starting in the first round, 2 picks, and ending in the 5th round with 3 picks. They did a really good job of pretty much saying, hey, we need to add value. This is a weird year, and I think the Ravens at times even said, yeah, we're good with taking picks next year. We'll defer to next year a little bit with some of these picks that they could have gotten this year in trades and things like that. I think they went in with a plan, and they certainly executed that plan at a high level. I look at, they certainly came in according to the draft and according to the players they took. Wide receiver was something they were really worried about. Got 2 guys that are kind of similar in Rashad Bateman and Tylan Wallace. Bigger dudes who aren't necessarily the speed guys, and I think they have enough speed guys on their team that I don't think they were valuing like those speed receivers. Rashad Bateman is like a technician type of guy, and we'll get into the breakdown there a little bit later. But something that really surprised me was their emphasis on the cornerback position, drafting 2 corners and one in the 3rd and one in the 5th. But overall, you look at this draft as a very boom or bust draft, in my opinion. You just going down the line of guys who are like, okay, this dude could be awesome, or he could be a total dud, and I really don't know. Jason Oweh out of Penn State, he's the ultimate boom or bust, a guy who has all the measurables, all the physical ability, but no production in college. I mean, 0 sacks last year, no production in college. A Ben Cleveland, who I would say was a little bit of a boomer bust guy, big hulking man with kind of slower feet and something like that, that I thought was like a little bit less than athletically. That could be an issue. And then Shaun Wade, who, if he would have come out in 2020 draft, he was like, what, a top 50 pick probably? Dude was awesome, but just fell off a cliff this past year. And, there's the, he was hurt excuse. There was a lot of things that, according to Shaun Wade and his people, went wrong. That's why he had a bad season. Very, very possible that all that's true. But at the same time, that's what I would say too if I had a bad season. So you never know. Where the truth lies there, probably somewhere in the middle, to be totally honest. Let's get started with Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman, obviously wide receiver out of Minnesota, goes 27th overall to the Ravens. I think everyone knew that wide receiver was going to be in play here for the Ravens. Rashad Bateman does fall in their lap here. I thought it might be a Terrace Marshall. I guess there was some injury issues or medical issues there for Terrace Marshall that kind of kept him out of that conversation. He ended up falling almost a round later to the bottom of the 2nd to the Panthers. With Rashad Bateman, you look at a guy who is a great route runner, has great hands, really, really good production there at Minnesota. And I mean, his ceiling is Keenan Allen. My issue, play speed. I thought he was just an okay athlete. I thought he was just, his athleticism, his athletic profile to me didn't scream first rounder. I thought he was an end of the 2nd type of guy. That's kind of where I had him. That was my grade for him. And listen, I'll own it. If I end up being wrong in a couple years, I plan on doing a whole series of videos talking about my grade and my rankings versus how it actually ends up going. And I can't wait to just shit all over myself on all my misses in the past couple years. I'm going to be starting that in a couple weeks, actually. So, if he ends up in my in that series in a couple years, hey, more power to the Ravens for knowing better, and more power to the public in general for just knowing more than me, because I certainly was in the minority on that one. And then their 2nd pick in the 1st round, the pick that they got in return from the Chiefs for trading Orlando Brown. I'm going to put up the graphic for that trade, and we'll talk about the trade just for a second. Obviously, got Jason Oweh out of that trade. Also was able to get a 3rd rounder in Ben Cleveland. Did have to send out a 2nd round pick, so kind of evened itself out a little bit there. And then, of course, a 4th rounder, which they ended up trading away and turning into a next year's 4th for the most part. And then they also got a 2022nd 5th. So they got a huge haul for an Orlando Brown, and the first major pick that they got out of that, and really the centerpiece of how we're going to look at that trade moving forward, is Jason Oweh here, defensive end, who's just, this dude, I said boomer bust, man, you talk about boomer bust. The only issue with his game is the fact that he just couldn't get to the quarterback. His production was not there his last year for Penn State, but just a physically dominant, physically gifted human being who can develop into a superstar. Is he going to be a starter year one? Probably not. But hey, listen, the Ravens did this a handful of times in this draft, and they can afford it. They can. They're a really freaking good football team. They can afford to take some chances and put this dude on the bench for a year and let him develop into the superstar he certainly has the potential to be. And it makes sense also, they let go of a Matthew Judon, and then also Yannick Ngakoue, who wasn't there very long, was there just about a half season. They got him from the Vikings midseason last year. But both guys that kind of play on like that perimeter, the Ravens do a lot on that defensive front, right? So Jayson Oweh is going to be asked to stand up. He's going to be asked to put his hand in the dirt. He might come in and just fill in that Matthew Judon role. Matthew Judon role was kind of a roamer and just kind of a heat-seeking missile a little bit on passing downs and was pretty good versus the run. That could be what Jayson Oweh is asked to do. He has all the physical tools to be that and be better than what Matthew Judon was. And Matthew Judon was pretty damn good in that role. Now, I'm not saying he is Matthew Judon. I'm not even saying he's going to fit in that exact same role. I don't know what the Ravens have planned for, but that just makes a lot of sense to me. It makes a lot of sense just what the Ravens did midseason last year, bringing in a Yannick Ngakoue. They certainly felt like they had a need on that defensive end, on that outside linebacker area of the field, rushing the quarterback from the edge, right? So Jayson Oweh might be the long-term answer to that type of position, whether they decide to keep a hand in the dirt full time or whether they want him to be more of that roaming guy who stands up and is like that more outside linebacker-y type of role. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to ask him to do, but dude just has all the potential in the world, and we'll just see how that ends up working out. And then because they did send their second-round pick along with Orlando Brown to the Chiefs, they had to wait until the third round to pick almost back-to-back, once at 94 overall and then 10 picks later at 104. Their first pick was Ben Cleveland, a guard from Georgia who I mean, just built like a barn, really, really smooth out of his stance, just has that power, has that length in his arms. The biggest negative is he's a little bit lumbering, a little bit like slow as far as like his feet speed, and I do think he'll struggle versus speed. If you ever have like an edge rusher kind of move inside and get a one-on-one matchup versus Ben Cleveland, yeah, he's going to have those issues. And listen, this is a guard. I don't see him being a tackle in the next level at all. So it'll be interesting. They didn't really address that tackle position that was vacated with the Orlando Brown trade. I would assume, and I don't know this, but I would assume that the Ravens feel good about somebody that they have waiting in the wings that the average fan or anybody like me just isn't going to know about. So we'll see what happens there. They obviously felt comfortable enough to not feel like they had to go tackle in those first two rounds or the first two picks in the first round. There were certainly a lot of guys that went off the board early in the second that would not have been a surprise at that point in the first either. So it was kind of interesting to see how this played out for the Ravens. Obviously, they're a team that really does just follow their draft board. So maybe, hey, it just didn't work out for them. Tackle didn't fall the way they wanted it to, and that is what it is. But moving on here, Brandon Stevenson, cornerback, another guy has the length, 6 foot, 213 pounds. This is a guy who, listen, he's raw at the position, and he's gonna come into a situation where he doesn't have to start. That is a really, really good situation for him. This could not have worked out better for the Brandon Stevenson, the person. Now, I do have questions about the player. I didn't really like him that much in press coverage. I think he needs to develop. I do see him as like a boomer bust prospect who's probably gonna be like a perimeter guy. This wasn't a guy that I thought was gonna be a nickel corner. Now, granted, this is very, very limited film. I watched about a game and a half just preparing for this video and just reading some scouting reports online. That's the extent of my research for Brandon Stevenson. I always want to be honest with that. There's some guys that I know coming into it and I feel really confident about my assessment, and there's some guys I didn't know who this was. I really didn't. I didn't watch him pre-draft. I watched him in preparation for this video, and I don't get it. I'll be honest with you. It didn't look like a third round pick to me. I'll put it that way. And hey, what do I know? I think this was another situation where it's like, okay, you have Marlon Humphreys, you have Marcus Peters, you have some of these names. I would say both of those guys are top 20, top 25 corners in the NFL. Now, corner and defensive back in general is a very, very important position for the Ravens for everything they do on the back end. They ask a lot of their guys, and there's a reason they bring in such big names. I think a little bit of this Brandon Stevenson pick is, hey, let's see if we can find a cheaper option. Let's see if we we can spend a third round pick on them, develop him really well. Ravens are always so good at doing that. And then, when the contract time comes for some of these other guys, hey, we can offload that, let him get a big contract somewhere else, get a compensatory pick for him. Oh yeah, that's about what we spent on a Brandon Stevenson. Oh, look how that works out. It's a circle of life for the Ravens a little bit, and I think that's kind of what they were thinking there. And before we get to the final breakdown and the final overview of this Ravens draft, I do want to just point out this other trade that happened in the 4th round. You had the Cardinals trading up with the Ravens. Ravens end up getting a 5th round pick this year, and basically just moved up from a 6th to a 5th this year, and got a 4th next year. You look at this trade breakdown. Aside from moving up to 210 to 160, which is certainly valuable, I don't want to discount that completely. What they did is they said, okay, we don't really like anybody here. Let's get a 4th round pick next year. And that's exactly what they did, and they think it worked out. And also, Shaun Wade, who I do kind of want to talk about for a second. Shaun Wade's a guy who, is incredibly boom, incredibly bust. And I know I mentioned it at the top of the show, but just another corner that they might be thinking the exact same thing about. Hey, this is a guy who showed a ton of potential in that 2020 season and then fell off a cliff in the 2021 season for Ohio State. Maybe they're looking at him as a guy who, like, okay, we're going to put him on the roster. We're going to give him a chance to develop. And again, neither of these two corners that they drafted need to start right away. They get to kind of sit behind and learn from two really good NFL players right now. So yeah, just interesting what the Ravens are doing. It feels like they're playing chess when everyone else is playing checkers. I really like it. And really, when you look at their entire draft, and I want to put that graphic up one more time just to kind of bookend this conversation, it really, other than the wide receivers, maybe none of these guys are going to be starting this year. They really made moves for future Ravens. They were not thinking about the 2021 Ravens. Their roster's good right now. They're fine. I think they were thinking about future assets, knowing they're probably going to have to pay Lamar Jackson out the ass, knowing that there's going to be a lot of young players that are asking for a contract soon. They got a lot of producers on that team, and they're not going to be able to pay them all. So other than the wide receiver position, which I think was one of the bigger needs coming into this class, getting a guy who maybe just isn't speed and can run routes and do different things in that offense, which they certainly got in a Rashad Bateman and to a lesser extent in a Tylan Wallace. But got multiple corners, got multiple guys that are going to be playing on like that edge outside linebacker role. Obviously a 5th round pick out of Notre Dame, another guy who just potential, just traits, and I think that's what they were targeting. It's going to be really, really fun to see what the Ravens are doing in the next couple of years and see how this roster kind of turns over on themselves. They have a lot of big decisions to make, and it'll be interesting how this draft specifically informs those decisions. But let's get to my final breakdown here. My best and worst move overall, and I'm going to go cheesy here, man. Their best move and their worst move is their same move. All of the boom and bust players. I know I'm taking the easy way out on this one. There's no clear bad move on this draft. There's a lot of risks, but there's no bad move, I don't think. Like trading away Orlando Brown. I brought that into the conversation as well, because that is very much a draft-related move. They got a lot of assets in the draft, in this draft specifically. I'm not going to sit here and say, like, oh, the guys that they got replaced Orlando Brown. They don't at all. They don't even play the same position. But, maybe they know more than I do. They certainly do know more than I do. I can tell you that for a fact. But they know more than I do, and there's certainly a good chance that this ends up working out. All of the players, pretty much named every single player in this draft class, I feel like has high ceiling and kind of a low floor. I feel like it could really go either way. So hey, that's a great move if it works out, and it's a terrible move if it doesn't. So I'm covering all my bases there. A little bit of a cheesy answer there. I do apologize. I won't be cheesy in this last segment here. Giving my final grades, and I do give my grades a little bit different. I break my grades down into 3 categories: the players, the value, and the need. So for the players, and this is just like the players that were drafted and how I feel about them. It's 1000% just my opinion, not bringing in draft value, not bringing in needs, anything like that. Just the players, I'm giving it a C, just an even C. It was almost a C minus, but I brought it up to C when I really started thinking about it. Yeah, I didn't like Rashad Bateman. That brought it down for me. And for that to be your first pick, I'm not a fan. I thought there was other guys on the board that I would have liked a lot more. And I'm not a fan of Rashad Bateman. I'm lower on him. So that is going to inform my grade. That is what it is. I understand that if you're a Ravens fan and you were big on Rashad Bateman, that's totally fine. you're probably right. I mean, everyone thinks I'm wrong on this. Like, everyone's told me he was a first round pick. The NFL said he was a first round pick with him being going in the first round. So maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. But I'm not willing to completely call myself an idiot just yet. But that's just my take, and I'm going to stand by it until I end up being proven wrong. And when I am, like I said at the beginning of the video, I'll let you know. I have no ego here. Like, it just is what it is. This is all fun and games for me. Jason Oweh, linebacker. I really do like Jason Oweh, so that was a positive. That was a feather in their cap. But Brandon Stevenson, not a big fan. I don't get it. I'm not gonna lie to you. You certainly don't get it in the third round. Shaun Wade, he's like a C grade for me overall. Like, I like the value, fifth round, no problem with that. I mean, the upside is awesome. The upside's certainly really good. But I mean, man, the downside is just a waste of a pick, right? But in the fifth round, you can afford that. And then Talon Wallace was just not a wide receiver I was super high on either. So, overall, I'm personally not a fan of the players they got. None of these guys were guys that I was like, oh, I need my Miami Dolphins to go get them. I'm a Dolphins fan, so like, I always try and look at it from that lens. Like, are these guys I like, or do I not like them? So no, don't love them. Certainly guys that I like for the Ravens, so that's why it's not like an absolutely awful grade, but not my favorite draft class of players overall. And then draft value, and I really struggle with this one. I landed on B+ because when you really go through it and look at it, all of their trades were A+ value, right? Like, the two trades that we talked about, good value. And then Rashad Bateman, who obviously I didn't have as a first round guy, but everyone else did. So I'm not going to really count that against the Ravens as not getting good value. I mean, that's pretty much exactly where he was expected to go, if not earlier, in pretty much every mock that I saw. Now, mocks don't mean a whole lot, but still, I'll put that as a feather in their cap. Jason Oweh, another great value guy. Really, I would say Brandon Stevenson, not great value. Talon Wallace, okay value, but I actually thought there were better guys on the board at that point. So I'm gonna nick it down a little bit there. So overall, the Ravens are smart. They always get premium value, I feel like. And then at the end of the day, needs, they hit. I'm gonna give it an A for needs. They hit the needs that they had. I felt like their two biggest needs coming into this draft was going to be that outside linebacker / D end role that they lost with a Yannick Ngakoue, who granted wasn't on the team for very long, but they traded for because they knew there was a need, right? So that's kind of like, that's a clue for everybody watching. Like, oh, they traded mid-season for a Yannick Ngakoue, a defensive end. I wonder what they feel like they need in the draft. So they hit that pretty hard. And then obviously corner, yeah, they I didn't think that was a need for them, but they obviously did, and they kind of know what they're doing with that. So I'm not going to sit here and say that was like, those were terrible picks, and they don't have a whole lot of holes. So I'm fine with them addressing corner and addressing what could be a future need. The only other need that you could say, and the reason this wasn't an A+ for me, was with the Orlando Brown trade. I thought left a hole, but as I mentioned a handful of times, I do think, they got a plan for that. They're going to be okay there. Overall, guys, I will say, this draft, underwhelming. Yeah, not my favorite draft class from the Ravens. Usually the Ravens just blow it out of the park and seem to get like guys that I freaking love, and that I'm just like mad that my team didn't get. This year, I don't feel that way, but I think they came in with a plan. This is a weird year, and I think they not only were able to get the guys that they obviously were targeting, but they were able to bring in future assets for next year. All right, guys, that's all I got on the Ravens. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. I am doing every single team in this series. I'm just kind of trying to get through it as quickly as I can. So a bunch of videos are going to be popping up on this channel back to back to back. Thank you so much for watching. If you're a Ravens fan, let me know what you thought in the comments below. I'd really love to get the Ravens fan perspective on this draft and what they're thinking for their team moving forward. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Peace.